Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the comment section. For those that don't know who I am, my name is James Urquhart. I am the founder of Rupert, your 24/7 social media assistant. Our mission is very simple. We want more brands to extract more value from their comment section. I see so many brands missing a trick and missing sales opportunities within their comment section, whether that be paid or organic. And we at Rupert are really trying to just promote that brands interact and engage with their community, their audience via the comment section, which typically is being neglected across the board. So today we're going to be running through building community around your brand through social media engagement, the secret to fostering loyal followers by actively engaging with your audience. And we always start with a stat every week. And this week's stat, if my clicker works, it does work now, is 71% of consumers who had a positive social media experience with a brand are more likely to recommend them to others. We know this, especially in community-led brands, which we're going to run on through today. We know that when you have that positive experience, you do naturally refer your friends, refer your family to those brands. And again, the statistics, even on this one, shows that even more so. So again, if you're not doing this, we're going to give you some tips and tricks to be able to how to do that today. So I've got a few examples of brands that have built communities and have done it very, very well, and also one that I believe it could be doing it better. So this one actually is a community called GB Ultras. These are an ultra running community brand who run races all up and down the country, typically 50 miles or more, and they've been going for a long, long time. Now, as a keen runner myself and do a lot of their races, I found the GB Ultras community Facebook group recently for just questions that need to be answered around locations and where to stay and all the rest of it. But what I found really, really interesting with how these guys have built their community is a Facebook group, which has worked, and obviously you've got school now as well. But actually, they've built ambassadors within this group. So GB Ultras now don't really do a lot of the admin. It's actually the ambassadors or the admins of the group themselves who are literally just volunteers who are just a massive advocate for the brand. And you know, we'd had a race last weekend. There were 700 participants. Every single race is booked out straight away, and they've built that through just the community. And again, I'm actually going to do a podcast on these guys in the next couple of weeks because there's a couple of ways that they've been able to increase their lifetime value of a customer, and they've done it in a very clever way, which I've been really, really impressed with. But yeah, if you're looking for an example of a brand that has built a community, and there's one other actually annoyingly in the running space, they've done it really well. They're one to look at. Click the wrong button. So building a community through your brand through social engagement. So I always put this into three. So the first one is, first of all, why is it so crucial? Well, social media is where your audience lives. We know this as brands, as you know, especially those in the e-commerce space, and you're using social to acquire. We know that our audience resides on social media, and for an average across the board, it's 2 hours a day. So if our audience we know is somewhere for 2 hours a day, we need to be on them and we need to be engaging with them on those particular platforms. Now, it might be Instagram, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Facebook. My recommendation is find out where your audience lives and then sit on there. We know that you can now be on Instagram, you can be on LinkedIn, you can be on TikTok. Fine if you've got the resource to do all of them, but I would really find where your community is more engaging and then actually really double down on that particular channel, opposed to spreading yourself too thin and then not responding to comments here and not responding to there, because all you're going to do is actually do the adverse effect. You're going to annoy people, you're going to neglect people, and then you're not going to build a community. The second thing is engagement builds trust and loyalty. This is really simple. We know that engagement builds trust and loyalty, and actually, if you do a really, really good job of engaging and building out brand advocates, you'll do what like GB Ultras have done. You'll have people answering the question for you and advocating for you without you being online, which is absolutely amazing. And the third one is it creates a ripple effect. We know this. If you create engagement and then you engage back via likes and replies and building conversations, what's going to happen is it's going to encourage the algorithm to prioritize your content. So it's going to amplify your organic reach. Now, I call this free reach. If you've got a social ad, paid ad, or a social organic ad, and it's getting loads and loads of engagement, you will naturally, that will just be sent out to more people, because you're doing what the platforms want, which is you're getting people to come back to their platform, which means they've got market share. Now, from a paid perspective, you're running paid ads, your CPMs will decrease. If you've got an ad that's performing very well and you're getting loads of engagement on it, you will see the CPMs reduce. Now, that's going to reduce your cost per lead. It might mean that you could potentially reduce your ad spend for the month and actually receive the same volume of leads or sales. But again, there is that ripple effect, and actually not a lot of brands know this, which is again why we do these every Wednesday. Here's another example before we go on to the tips. Here's an example of a brand that I believe can do so much more, and this one weirdly is Gymshark. So Gymshark, we know, I would class them as a community-led brand. They're massive, aren't they? They're a unicorn. And what's incredible, even though they have the resource they do, when you look at their ads, when you look at their organic, social, very, very few of their comments are responded to. In some of the sub accounts, so things like the Gymshark Lifting Club, there's a little bit more engagement back, but there's not huge amounts. So I think, for me personally, a brand to look at on how not to do it from a comment management perspective would be Gymshark, which is quite disappointing because, like I said, they are the poster boys when it comes to community, community-led brand. So I keep pressing the wrong clicker today. So the secret to fostering loyal followers by actively engaging with your audience. So here's the 3 tips that, again, you can take away and you can implement in your brand, and hopefully you'll start seeing actually that community building. And you might not build a huge community like a Gymshark or a GP Ultras. You may need a really finite small community to make it commercially viable. So the first rule is, or my first tip, is the free comment rule. For every 3 comments you receive, at least one of those will become a buyer at some point, and the statistics show that. So you need to respond to a minimum of 33% of your comments. But just remember that 1 in 3 comment rule is really, really important. They might not become a buyer today, but the statistics show in their lifetime they will become a buyer at some stage because they've actively engaged with your brand. And even if that's a negative comment, I have a lot of clients who are using Roop at the moment who are seeing a turn in which we would call brand bashers into advocates. The second tip is initiate conversation. I see so few brands do this, and it seems simple, but I think we keep forgetting that actually these are people behind the comment. These aren't bots. These aren't spammy old people. These are just someone that's trying to interact with your brand and actually in a way be heard. And the best way for someone is to feel heard is to actually to ask them a question back. And so many brands, I see this, they just do maybe a reaction, or they just do a love heart, or they go, "Hey, cheers, Sim." No. Actually engage in a conversation, initiate that. What did you like about our product? What did you think about our race, or whatever it may be? Because what you're going to find then is that they're going to come back. You're going to spike the algorithm. So again, that ripple effect. But what's more important then, you've got someone that feels heard. They feel like they're part of your brand, and they feel that they're part of your community. And I think for me, that's where the best brands who build communities do it well. They listen, but they don't just listen, they make their community feel heard. And I've got a really good example of a couple of brands that are coming, and you'll know them, especially for one that's been sort of acquired recently, or invested in quite heavily recently. And the third one is recognize brand advocates. So this for me is, I'd say, one of the biggest tricks brands are missing out on, is finding, and it's hard because within, for example, Meta Business Suite, it's hard to find the advocate. So you may have 250 comments a month. How do you find out those 250 who those biggest advocates of your brand are? And that's where the difficulty comes. but they are there. It's just how you find them, and you need to find them, because actually, what if they could create content for you? What if you could just send them a discount code and then their lifetime value actually spikes, or they could refer you to 4 of their friends? Trying to find those people that really advocate for your brand is something that I think brands are missing out on. And it's, I'm not talking about influencers here. I'm talking about someone that comes and spends money in your shop every 2 weeks, and they have done for the last 2 years, and they're commenting on your post saying how much they love maybe your coffee in your local coffee shop, and the new donuts were great. Well, why not, when they next come in, give them a free coffee or give them a free donut? That will go so far, and you won't get, you'll have the biggest advocate, who's going to sing your praises to the world. So try and recognize them, try and find them. I'm not saying it's easy, because I understand it's very difficult. One of the features with Rupert is actually highlighting those advocates and those bashes, so brands can find them for content, or they can just send them a discount code. And it's been very successful for a few companies. Things like Nature Wall and Green Company have actually found content creators from their advocates page, which is really, really, really cool to see. Here's 2 further examples of brands that have actually created really, really good communities. Now, the first one, these are very running centric today, and apologies, but they've done it very well. And Runner have just been acquired by Strava. They've done that in a 4-year period. And again, I won't talk too much about Runner, but look at what they've done in terms of that, building that community. They've sort of done it very much like Hjordan, which is like become a hooligan. It's very, very similar. But again, they've done it very, very well. And that's one that I would definitely have a look at. And the second one within this little one is Pure Sport. Pure Sport are a health and wellness brand. They do things like electrolytes. I'm drinking one literally right this second. They do creatine now. They do CBD oil, which I use for my legs. And they've grown so quickly because they've built a community. And you'll see here is a few sort of photos I've taken from their socials. What they did the London Marathon recently was with a budget, 20 grand budget, in comparison to what New Balance and Nike had, was just mind blowing. And again, what you'll also see with Pure Sport is that they've got their Pure Sport paid, but they've also got Pure Sport clubs. And what's really interesting with this is that although the follower for the Pure Sports club is lower, actually, when you look at the engagement on the Pure Sports clubs is a lot more than the page itself, the homepage, probably not the right word to use there. And again, you can see there that building a community within the clubs is actually getting more engagement. Now, the reality is it's going to filter into Pure Sports, then they're going to become a customer and buy their products, which is great. But these guys are a community-led brand, very similar to what Gymshark was in the early stages. So I'm pretty seeing their evolution. Gymshark's got to the sort of near to the end, I guess, but too being there to respond to all their comments. Whereas again, Pure Sport are very early on their journey and are responding. They are engaged and they're building that community. So some really, really good examples there. Now I'm going to open the floor to any questions. No one ever asks any questions on this, so if you have got any, write them in. I'll respond. If not, send me a message on LinkedIn after, and I'll get to them in the near future. I'll do it later today. Next session, always next Wednesday at 11 a.m. We're going to be discussing protecting your brand from trolls and spam. How to use tools to filter out spam, abusive comments automatically. A lot of brands are really struggling with this, and a brand that I see more than ever struggling is Axel Aragato. I've mentioned them a few times because when you look at their paid ads, they're getting spammed to death, and I don't understand why. All the brands that I look at, for a luxury brand as they are, they're getting absolutely bombarded with spam comments. I'm not really too sure why, but it looks really bad because they're not cheap trainers. And if you're going to fork out 250 quid from the trainers and you're on the fence and you start seeing a load of spam comments from overseas, it looks naff. And for me, it's a real issue. So again, we're going to discuss how we can protect your brand from that. And as always, thank you everyone for listening. I've just come under the 15 minutes for once, which is perfect. Have a great day, and I will see you next week.